live in New Hampshire. Joining us now, Governor Chris Christie. You've been on a move now here in New Hampshire, moving up in the polls. We got a lot to talk about. I got to begin, though, and I know it's not your favorite subject, but I got to begin with Donald Trump. You heard Bernie Sanders call him a pathological liar. Your response to what he said this morning?
Well, listen, there was a lot that he said this morning. I would just say this. One, I was in New Jersey on September 11th, and thousands of people simply were not celebrating in Jersey City. The former state attorney general, who was closely watching this, a Republican, back in 2001, said it's not true, so we know that's not true. Secondly, on Putin, I'll just say the same thing I said yesterday. I wouldn't want the endorsement. I wouldn't want it. So if he's happy with it, that's fine.
But, you know, you've also said that we're already in World War III. You said, what are the implications of that right now? And you've also said that if Donald Trump gets the nomination, you're comfortable with him as commander-in-chief. Are you really comfortable with him as commander-in-chief in a World War III situation?
More comfortable than with Hillary Clinton, because she's the one who's got us into the World War III situation with Barack Obama. I mean, think about it. She said last night, we're finally where we need to be on ISIS.
We're not.
Oh, my gosh. With dead bodies in Paris, with dead bodies in San Bernardino, and with no plan from this administration about how to deal with it, we're finally where we need to be. I mean, Mrs. Clinton is Mrs. Happy Talk, and she just wants to happy talk her way to the presidency. She is the personification of this administration. Are you going to believe me or your lying eyes? I mean, so, you know, the fact is that that's not where we need to be.
She's called for a no-fly zone. She's called for a coalition. You've called for a no-fly zone as well. The big difference, you're willing to put ground troops, put American troops on the ground in Iraq.
Well, yeah, that's one of the big differences, but as part of a coalition, yes. But listen, this is the woman who last night refused to answer the question about Libya. Now, this was her strategy. And 3 times, I think, Elizabeth asked her, or Martha rather, asked her about what responsibility do you bear for what's happening in Libya. She refuses to answer it. And this is why.
What responsibility does she bear?
Well, I think she bears a lot. It's her strategy. Listen, if Libya had turned out to be a shining success and was a democracy, Mrs. Clinton would be dancing around the stage, talking about how it was her idea and how she recommended it to the president, and she got it implemented. But yet when there's a downside, she takes no responsibility. It's like this president saying he wants to close Guantanamo. And when 30% now, by his own DNI's analysis from Mr. Clapper, says that 30% of the people he's released from Guantanamo have gone back into the terrorist fight against the United States, how can you possibly think about closing Guantanamo? But this is this tone-deaf administration, a guy who yesterday, George, said that he doesn't understand the anxiety of Americans because he doesn't watch enough cable news.
But going forward, are you sure Americans are ready to accept another U.S. intervention, ground troops in the Middle East?
No, I'm not sure. And it's the job of the President of the United States to make the case. If you believe that's where the country needs to go, then you have a responsibility, excuse me, you have a responsibility to make the case to the American people.
But what about the argument
and that's what I'll do if I'm president.
Clinton and Senator Sanders made today that it has to be Muslim troops taking the lead on the ground?
I don't disagree with that. But we have to be part of it, and so do the Europeans, because the threat from ISIS is not just to us, it's to those Muslim countries, and it's to the Europeans as well, as we saw in Paris, and to us as we saw in San Bernardino. And as the Jordanian pilot was burned in a cage, King Abdullah knows that it's to his people as well.
You have been moving up in New Hampshire, as I said. That's made you more of a target. A super PAC aligned with Governor Kasich is running this ad right now.
Tonight are very basic and have been agreed to by all 3.
That is not the John Kasich ad.
It doesn't look like
right?
Is Kasich putting Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders on his ads?
The point he's making is that your state is in deficit, his state is in surplus.
Well, my state's not in deficit, and that's wrong. And in fact, what our state has done over the course of the last 6 years is to create 225,000 new private sector jobs. The 8 years before I became governor, George, 0 net private sector jobs. And this year, 2015, is the best year of private sector job growth in New Jersey in 15 years.
Your credit has also been downgraded several times.
It sure has. You know why? Because I'm cleaning up the mess that I inherited, and I'm doing it honestly and rightfully, and not by borrowing more money to paper it over. So, listen, they want to have a debate about the New Jersey record? Bring it on. I'm ready to have it.
Rand Paul is ready to have that debate as well. I think we have the sound.
We've sabotaged all these video clips, George.
You did a good job right here.
It was another data breach. Bernie Sanders helped me. It was fabulous.
In the debate Tuesday night.
I think when we think about the judgment of someone who might want World War III, we might think about someone who might shut down a bridge because they don't like their friends.
Donald Trump's been talking about this as well. You think you're going to be able to deal with this issue if you start to do better here in New Hampshire?
I don't even know what the issue is. I mean, there is no issue. And the fact is that was, commentary from a desperate candidate on the last legs of his campaign. He was flailing away at everybody on that stage. He reminded me of Bobby Jindal in the undercard debate the last time, when all he did was flail away at people, and then a few days later he dropped out. Maybe that's Rand Paul's fate.
What's your strategy going forward? You're betting it all on New Hampshire right now. You're spending a lot of time here following the John McCain playbook. But what about after? A lot of your opponents have pointed out you don't even have much of an organization in South Carolina. How do you capitalize even if you do well here?
How much do I love the fact that my opponents are worried about what organization I have in the future, that I'm going to do very well here in New Hampshire. No one was saying that 3 months ago, George. Nobody's worried about that then. Here's what will happen. The power of our ideas and the power of our campaign and the momentum that we develop from Iowa and New Hampshire will carry us in the other states as well. And you've seen this happen time and time again in presidential politics. What happens in Iowa and New Hampshire helps to reconfigure the race and determine what's going to happen. Listen, if Maria Camella's biggest problem on February 10th...
Your communications director.
If her biggest problem, she's running this campaign. If her biggest problem on February 10th is, how do I hire more people? I think we'll accept that problem.
I think I see Maria smiling over there. I'm afraid that's all we have time for today.
Thank
Governor
you.
Christie, thanks for joining us this morning. And we're going to be back with a representative of the Clinton campaign.